Have you ever felt that uncomfortable mix of insecurity and frustration when faced with someone's indifference? As if suddenly all your efforts to be recognized were invisible? This feeling is more common than it seems, and often, it's precisely there that our greatest opportunity for growth lies. Life, with its unpredictable relationships and frustrated expectations, tests not only our patience but also our sense of control over situations. It's on this shaky ground that we can discover an unexpected strength, the ability to transform vulnerability into fuel to build trust that doesn't depend on anyone. When we understand that another's indifference doesn't define our worth, something shifts within us. We begin to realize that, behind our apparent detachment, there may also be insecurity and other people's emotional limitations. This shift in perspective is powerful because it frees us from the burden of trying to control what cannot be controlled, and brings us closer to a state of self-sufficiency and inner peace. Instead of reacting impulsively, we begin to act with resilience, better tolerating frustrations and channeling our energy toward what truly matters: our personal growth. This guide is an invitation to embark on a path of inner transformation. In each of the 7 steps, we'll explore together how to cultivate strategic silence, detachment from others' expectations, purpose in the face of difficulties, and tolerance in the face of challenges. These aren't ready-made recipes, but practical reflections, inspired by Stoic philosophy, so you can find your own way to empower yourself. Are you ready to discover that your greatest weakness can become your secret weapon? The illusion of control, the true weakness behind indifference. The first lesson we need to understand is that indifference often presents itself as a mask of strength. When someone ignores or distances themselves, it's easy to interpret this as contempt or superiority, but in reality, it's often just an attempt to hide insecurity. The person who acts this way seeks to maintain an illusion of control, avoiding facing their own weaknesses. It's as if they're telling the world, "I'm fine, I don't need anyone," when deep down vulnerability is real and pulsating. The challenge for us is to not be fooled by this disguise, recognizing that true strength comes not from indifference, but from the courage to face difficult emotions. Understanding this dynamic is the first step toward freeing ourselves from the anxiety caused by others' reactions. Instead of trying to control situations beyond our control, we can cultivate resilience and learn to manage the feelings that arise within us. Stoic philosophy teaches that we cannot control other people's behavior, but we can control our own responses. Therefore, when someone shows indifference, we can use this experience to strengthen our emotional self-sufficiency and realize that our worth depends not on external validation, but on the consistency of our own principles. To put this into practice, start by observing your reactions to indifference without judging yourself. Write in a journal when you feel insecure or frustrated, trying to understand where these emotions come from. A simple exercise is to ask yourself, am I trying to control something that doesn't depend on me? This small step teaches us that true freedom lies not in manipulating others, but in mastering our inner world, using vulnerability as a bridge to growth. By recognizing this truth, we begin to transform seemingly negative experiences into opportunities for empowerment and emotional maturity. Detachment from others' expectations. A path to freedom. Learning to let go of other people's expectations is like letting go of a backpack full of rocks we carry without realizing it. Every approval we seek, every compliment we expect, adds weight to our lives and leaves us vulnerable to insecurity. When we begin to practice detachment, we are not isolating ourselves, but rather connecting with our own essence. This movement allows us to make choices aligned with our purpose, strengthening our confidence in who we truly are. The freedom to live without being tied to other people's opinions is undoubtedly a powerful step toward inner peace. Detachment also teaches us to better deal with others' indifference. When we stop relying on external recognition, lack of attention no longer affects us, and we realize that our value is intrinsic. We can, for example, establish small daily practices, deciding what we will prioritize without consulting anyone, or dedicating time to projects that motivate us, regardless of what others think. This attitude not only strengthens our resilience but also brings us closer to a more authentic life, where our actions are guided by internal control rather than the need to please. To incorporate detachment into your routine, start by evaluating your relationships and commitments. Which truly add value to your life and which merely reinforce external expectations. A good exercise is to create a list of personal priorities, clearly defining goals and values. This allows you to develop emotional self-sufficiency, reducing your dependence on external validation. Consistent practice helps us transform vulnerability into strength, and silence in the face of others' expectations becomes an ally, reaffirming that true freedom lies in living on our own terms, not according to others' visions. The power of indifference as a reflection of inner strength. Learning to view other people's indifference as an opportunity, not an attack, is a crucial step toward strengthening our self-sufficiency. When we become accustomed to not depending on others' approval, every gesture of disinterest becomes a chance to reaffirm our inner confidence. It's natural to feel a pang in our heart when faced with a lack of recognition, but this reaction is merely a reflection of our own insecurity. By choosing not to react impulsively, we exercise control over our emotions and preserve our energy for what truly matters. This approach also allows us to develop resilience in practical ways. For example, in situations at work or in our social lives, when someone ignores our efforts, we can choose to stay focused on our goals and values, undeterred. Stoicism reminds us that we don't control the actions of others, but we do have complete control over how we react to them. By practicing indifference in the face of indifference, we demonstrate not only emotional maturity but also a quiet strength that speaks louder than any impulsive or defensive response. To internalize this power, it's helpful to create small daily practices. Set aside a few minutes each day to reflect on your personal achievements, without needing to share them or seek approval. Write down your accomplishments in a journal, reminding yourself that their value lies within you, not in the reactions of others. This practice strengthens purpose and tolerance, and helps us realize that, often, the vulnerability felt in the face of indifference is actually the gateway to deep and lasting growth. Stoic silence. Turning ignorance into power. Silence can be a more powerful weapon than any words. When faced with provocation or indifference, the automatic reaction is often to justify ourselves or try to prove our worth. However, Stoicism teaches us that true strength lies in remaining calm and in control, allowing time and action to speak for us. Silence is not passivity. It is a conscious choice to preserve our energy and dignity, protecting ourselves from the trap of reacting to every external stimulus. Practicing silence in the face of ignorance also strengthens our resilience. For example, in meetings or conversations where disdain or contempt arise, choosing not to respond immediately allows us to reflect on the best course of action. This space gives us clarity to assess whether it's worth investing energy in the situation or simply letting it pass. Over time, this habit transforms our perception. We realize that vulnerability arises more from our impulsive reactions than from the behavior of others, and silence becomes an ally in strengthening self-confidence. To incorporate this practice into your daily life, start with short moments of silent reflection, like 5 minutes before responding to provocative messages or comments. Take a deep breath, observe your emotions, and ask yourself, does this reaction serve my purpose, or is it just fueling my anxiety? Over time, you'll realize that strategic silence not only maintains your self-sufficiency, but also enhances your presence and natural authority, transforming every act of ignoring indifference into a demonstration of inner strength, transforming absence into self-reliance through presence. The lack of external attention or recognition can be uncomfortable, but it's also a valuable opportunity to cultivate self-sufficiency. When we stop relying on others' validation, we begin to look inward, recognizing our own worth and strengthening our purpose. This movement allows us to build a solid emotional presence, where insecurity has no room to grow, and our energy isn't drained by the need to please or impress. Turning absence into strength requires daily practice. For example, when someone doesn't recognize your efforts, instead of reacting, try focusing on small personal victories. A task well done, a kind gesture, or a goal achieved. This internal focus strengthens resilience and helps us realize that our value is independent of external responses. Furthermore, by strengthening our self-sufficiency, we begin to attract more genuine and balanced relationships based on mutual respect rather than frustrated expectations. To implement this transformation, set aside time for activities that nourish your self-esteem and self-sufficiency. Meditation, reading inspiring books like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, or even writing down your reflections are practices that reinforce inner presence. Whenever we feel the need to seek external approval, we can remember that true power lies in what we can control, our posture, choices, and attitudes. Thus, the absence of others becomes not a painful gap, but an opportunity for personal growth and empowerment. The wisdom of time, letting time reveal its true value. Haste is one of the greatest enemies of resilience and building inner confidence. We live in a culture that values immediate results, but true strength lies in understanding that the purpose and value of our actions only reveal themselves over time. When we encounter indifference or lack of recognition, it's natural to feel a certain discomfort, but patience teaches us that we don't need instant approval. Stoicism reminds us that time is the best judge of our character, and that every consistent gesture, no matter how small, builds our reputation and self-confidence. Learning to wait also strengthens our self-sufficiency. Instead of seeking constant feedback or immediate reactions, we can focus on what's within our reach, our choices, attitudes, and daily efforts. For example, when working on a project, instead of worrying about delayed recognition, observe the progress made, the skills developed, and the lessons learned. This approach reduces insecurity and helps us realize that true validation comes from our own consistency and dedication. An effective practice is to keep a journal or record of daily actions and achievements without relying on others' feedback. By revisiting these notes, we realize that time reveals the value of our actions, reinforcing resilience, detachment from external expectations, and confidence in our path. Thus, each experience becomes an investment in our personal growth, and we learn to transform waiting into learning, strengthening our ability to face future challenges with patience and wisdom. Gratitude in the face of indifference, turning challenges into growth. Gratitude may seem like a distant concept when we encounter others' indifference, but it is precisely in these moments that it reveals its power. Instead of harboring hurt or resentment, we can choose to see every gesture of selflessness as an opportunity to strengthen our resilience and self-confidence. Practicing gratitude helps us realize that our worth doesn't depend on external approval, but on how we deal with challenges and cultivate our emotional self-sufficiency. It's an exercise in shifting perspective, transforming what could be pain into learning. To incorporate this practice into your daily life, start by noting small situations in which others' indifference triggered feelings of vulnerability, and reflect on what you learned from them. For example, a colleague who ignores your efforts may be interpreted not as disdain, but as an invitation to reinforce your focus on what truly matters. By recognizing these opportunities, we develop greater tolerance and learn to direct our energy toward actions that strengthen our purpose, rather than wasting time and emotions on external frustrations. Furthermore, gratitude in the face of indifference connects us to a state of conscious presence. We can practice simple exercises, such as meditating for 5 minutes at the end of the day, remembering situations in which we manage to maintain emotional control and act calmly. This habit transforms small experiences of rejection or contempt into pillars of growth, strengthening our confidence and demonstrating that true strength comes not from what we receive, but from how we react to what we cannot control. The virtue of tolerance, overcoming indifference with empathy. Indifference can easily generate irritation or resentment, but cultivating tolerance is a way to protect our inner peace and strengthen our resilience. When we choose to understand that others' indifference often reflects their own insecurities and emotional limits, we open space for empathy. This stance doesn't mean accepting harmful behavior, but rather maintaining control over our reactions, preventing negative emotions from overpowering us and allowing our presence to be balanced and mindful. Practicing tolerance requires constant attention and reflection. In everyday situations, such as veiled criticism or silent contempt, we can ask ourselves, is this reaction about me or about the other person? This simple reflection helps build emotional self-sufficiency, reducing the need for external validation and strengthening our purpose. By acting with empathy, we can maintain healthier and more constructive relationships, even when faced with indifferent people, and transform potential conflicts into learning opportunities. To integrate tolerance into your routine, try these practical exercises. Before reacting to a cold or disinterested comment, take a deep breath and observe your emotions. Try to imagine the other person's context and what internal challenges may be shaping their behavior. Over time, this practice transforms the vulnerability felt in the face of indifference into a tool for growth, demonstrating that true strength lies in the ability to maintain serenity and clarity, even when the other person chooses to distance themselves or ignore you. Finding purpose in adversity, turning challenges into mission. Adversity is inevitable, but it's also an opportunity to discover our purpose and strengthen our resilience. When indifference or lack of recognition arises, we can choose to let ourselves be discouraged or transform the situation into a personal mission of growth. Each challenge becomes a mirror that reflects our areas of vulnerability and shows us where we can evolve. By adopting this perspective, we begin to take control of our narrative, seeing obstacles not as barriers, but as stepping stones to personal growth. Transforming challenges into purpose involves conscious action. For example, if we feel neglected in a work environment or in a friendship, we can use this experience to develop skills, support others facing similar situations, or even create projects that align with our values. This approach reinforces our self-sufficiency and reduces our dependence on external validation. By channeling pain into something greater, we discover that adversity, far from weakening us, can make us stronger, more determined, and more aware of our own capabilities. An effective practice is to reflect on each challenge we face and identify the learning or contribution it offers us. Ask yourself, how can I use this experience to serve myself and others? This reflection transforms initial insecurity into practical strength and connects us with a greater purpose. Over time, we will realize that facing indifference and other challenges not only strengthens our confidence, but also gives us the opportunity to leave a positive impact on the world, making each adversity a significant step in our journey of growth. Now that we've covered the 9 steps to dealing with indifference and strengthening your confidence, it's time to reflect on how to apply these lessons in real life. Ask yourself, in what situations do I still allow insecurity or the need for external approval to dominate me? What habits can I cultivate today to strengthen my self-sufficiency and resilience? Growth doesn't happen by accident. It requires practice, awareness, and the daily choice to prioritize our purpose over the reactions of others. Every challenge, every gesture of indifference can become a learning opportunity. By maintaining strategic silence, practicing detachment, cultivating tolerance, and recognizing our intrinsic value, we build confidence that doesn't depend on applause or external recognition. Try putting one of these tools into practice this week. Write down your achievements, meditate on your reactions, or reflect on your priorities. Small, consistent steps produce profound and lasting changes. Are you ready to transform your vulnerabilities into strengths? How about starting to apply these strategies right now and seeing the difference in your life? Remember, the control that truly matters is the one we exert over ourselves, and each conscious effort strengthens our presence, clarity, and purpose. If you want to continue receiving practical tips for growing emotionally and facing challenges with confidence, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The next step in your transformation starts here.